Darkness loomed over Egypt, not the kind that stole the light, but the kind that bound souls in chains. The Hebrews, who were once welcomed in the land, had become Pharaoh's slaves, toiling under the cruel sun, their cries of suffering lost in the wind. But their cries had reached the heavens, and their God had not forgotten them. From the wilderness came a man, chosen for a task greater than himself. His name was Moses. With his brother Aaron at his side, he stood before Pharaoh, the most powerful ruler on earth, and declared, "Thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, let my people go." Pharaoh laughed. Who was this God that he should obey? Egypt's gods were mighty. Pharaoh himself was considered divine. He would not bow to the demands of a nameless deity. But this was no mere request. It was a warning. A battle had begun, not with swords and armies, but with power beyond human reckoning. Egypt would learn, through 10 mighty plagues, that no kingdom, no king, and no God could stand against the will of the Almighty. The first sign of judgment struck the very heart of Egypt. The Nile, lifeblood of the land, turned to blood. Moses lifted his staff, and the waters darkened, thick and putrid. Fish floated lifeless to the surface. The river that had once given life now reeked of death. Yet Pharaoh's heart did not waver. His magicians, with their tricks, mimicked the plague in small measures, and he turned away, unmoved. Then came the frogs. From the river they came, swarming through the streets, into homes, into beds, into Pharaoh's very palace. No place was safe. Overwhelmed, Pharaoh begged Moses to end the plague. And so Moses prayed, and the frogs died. But the moment relief came, Pharaoh's promise died with them. He would not let the people go. So the dust of the earth became gnats, tiny, relentless, swarming over man and beast alike, filling the air with their ceaseless torment. Pharaoh's magicians, now helpless, whispered to him in fear, "This is the finger of God." But still, Pharaoh hardened his heart. Then the flies came, fierce, ravenous, covering the land in a buzzing black cloud. Yet in the land of Goshen, where the Hebrews dwelled, not a single fly stirred. For the first time, Pharaoh wavered. He called Moses and tried to bargain. "You may sacrifice to your God, but do not leave Egypt." Moses refused. This was not a negotiation. This was deliverance. Then a new terror struck. The livestock of Egypt, once strong and mighty, now lay dead in the fields. Horses, cattle, donkeys, all perished overnight. But still, Pharaoh would not yield. Then, without warning, a plague of boils broke out upon the people. Painful sores covered their skin. Even Pharaoh's magicians could not stand before him, afflicted and powerless. But Pharaoh clenched his jaw and refused to bend. So the heavens themselves unleashed their fury. Hail, unlike any Egypt had ever seen, rained down from the sky, massive, deadly stones of ice, striking man and beast, shattering trees, flattening fields. Thunder roared, fire flashed across the heavens. Pharaoh cried out, "I have sinned. The Lord is right, and I am wrong. End this storm, and I will let your people go." Moses raised his hands, and the storm ceased. But Pharaoh's promise was a lie. His heart hardened once more. Then came the locusts, a living nightmare. They darkened the sky and devoured what little remained. No green thing was left in Egypt. The land was stripped bare. Pharaoh, in desperation, begged for mercy. Moses prayed, and the wind carried the locusts into the sea. But as soon as they were gone, Pharaoh's resolve returned. So Egypt was cast into darkness. A thick, unnatural blackness swallowed the land. For 3 days, no sun, no moon, no stars. The people sat in fear, unable to move, unable to see. But in Goshen there was light. Pharaoh called for Moses once more. "Go, worship your God, but leave your flocks behind." Moses refused. "Not a hoof shall be left behind." Pharaoh, enraged, shouted, "Leave my sight. If you see my face again, you will die." Moses replied, "You have spoken truly. You will see my face no more." But one final plague remained, the most terrible of all. At midnight, the angel of death would pass through Egypt. Every firstborn son, from the greatest to the least, would perish. No home would be untouched by sorrow. But among the Hebrews, a different story was written. They had been given a command: take a lamb without blemish and sacrifice it. Take its blood and mark your doorposts, and when the angel of death sees the blood, he will pass over you. And so it was. The cry that rose from Egypt that night was like none before. Pharaoh's own son lay still, cold in death. The might of Egypt had been broken. At last, Pharaoh called for Moses. His voice was hollow, his pride shattered. "Go," he whispered, "take your people and leave." And so, after 400 years of slavery, the children of Israel left Egypt, walking toward the promise of freedom. But Egypt's story was not yet over. Pharaoh's heart would harden one last time. His armies would pursue. But at the shores of the Red Sea, Egypt would meet its final defeat. For when God calls his people out of bondage, no power on earth can stand in his way. The Exodus had begun. The 10 plagues were not just a show of power. They were a message to Egypt, to Israel, and to the world. No kingdom, no ruler, no false god can stand against the true and living God. The story of the plagues is more than history. It is a promise that no oppression lasts forever. A promise that when God speaks, the mighty must listen. A promise that deliverance always comes.